How's it going, guys? Today I am very excited to announce that I will be giving you all some awesome benchmarks on Nvidia's latest and greatest GeForce GTX Titan. Now, for those of you who don't already know, this is, in a nutshell, a $1,000 GPU that Nvidia is claiming to be the world's fastest single GPU card on the market right now. The only two other single GPU cards that come close to this one are the GTX 680 and the Radeon HD 7970. Of course, the GTX 690 and the Aries 2 definitely beat this card out in performance in almost every test that I've seen online, but that's because those are both dual GPU cards, and I will be getting into the pros and cons of single GPU and dual GPU cards later on in this video. But for now, I will be testing this card against the MSI GTX 680 Lightning, as well as the Radeon HD 7970X from HIS. And those are both factory overclock cards, so I felt that they were worthy contenders to go up against the GTX Titan. But enough of my rambling, why don't we get on to the hardware I'm using. Alright, so I am rocking all of the hardware that I have been using since the very beginning of this channel, so still sticking with the 2600K overclocked at 4400 MHz, and at the bottom there you can see I'm using the latest AMD and Nvidia drivers. So for the GTX 680, I ran them with the 314.07 drivers, and with the GTX Titan, I ran them with the .09 drivers. As far as I can tell, there's no performance benefit from either of those drivers, the only difference being that the .09 drivers include the GTX Titan profile. Taking a look at the right, you can see the specs of the card there. I didn't really want to do an unboxing or overview on this card because, quite frankly, I'm a little late on this product, and I know there's a lot of content already out there featuring that kind of thing, so if you guys want to watch a good overview video, go ahead and check out the Newegg video that Paul did on the GTX Titan. Basically goes over all the specifications that are listed here and quite a bit more. But things I did want to point out is that this does have a core clock, or a base clock, of 837 MHz and a boost clock of 876 MHz. Although I was seeing a boost clock of about 992 MHz right out of the box. The overclock frequency you see right there at 1162 MHz, that's actually the overclock, the maximum frequency I was able to achieve by manually overclocking this card, which I guess is a good time to go over the overclock settings that I used. So I used EVGA's Precision X software to do my overclocking. The power target is set at 106%, and just below that you can see temperature target. And the Titan right now is the only card where you can actually adjust this temperature target because it comes included with Nvidia's GPU Boost 2.0. So in all of the other 600 series cards from Nvidia, we saw GPU Boost 1.0. And the difference there being is that with GPU Boost 2.0, you can now set parameters based on temperature. So as you can see here, I prioritized my temp target at 83 degrees Celsius, which means my card should never get any hotter than that boundary. So this is really cool because it offers a completely new layer of customizability when overclocking your card. It's fun to tinker with, but also, okay, for example, I actually set my voltage to max. I don't even know what number it is, just set to max voltage. But I don't have to worry about how much voltage my card is being fed at any given moment, because if my card ever tries to go over 83 degrees, GPU Boost 2.0 is going to keep that voltage at bay and say, whoa, voltage, this is all the power we need right now because we're going past the temp target threshold. So not only is this really cool because it offers more customizability, but it's also going to help you potentially protect your card from future damage. Other than that, you can see GPU clock offset I've set at 155 MHz, and the memory clock offset I've set at a nice round even 100. And lastly, taking a look at the fan curve monitor to the right there, you can see that I have set the maximum fan speed to ramp up to 75%. If the card ever gets to 85 degrees. Which in theory it shouldn't, right? Because I've set the temp target at 83. But because we're overclocking and all that stuff, I gave it a little bit of leeway. Alright, so for the first test that I ran, we have Assassin's Creed 3, and this is a game I recently added to my list of benchmarks, just because it's a relatively new game, a lot of people are playing it, and it just looks awesome, so it's very graphically intensive and demanding, which is good for benchmarking, of course. So everything's set to max, and as you can see here, I didn't really see that much of a performance increase from the Titan over the GTX 680 Lightning, but when I overclocked it, however, I did see a pretty big jump, going from 56 to 64 frames per second. So that was nice. Sorry, 7970X, this definitely wasn't your round. Moving on to CRYSIS 3, the game that everybody wants to see benchmarked right now. The 7970X and the 680 Lightning just barely made it over 30 frames, with the 680 just barely beating out the 7970, but you can see there with the Titan, we actually achieved a much higher frame rate on average, going from 48 stock clock frequency to 54.6 when overclocked, and this is honestly the fastest, or the highest frame rate on average that I've seen from a single GPU card when running Crysis 3 at full settings. I think that's enough to call this card a Crysis 3 killer, and that kind of makes me happy. Moving on to Skyrim, you can see the results are pretty marginal at this point, but that's also because they just look that way because the y-axis goes all the way up to 140. But you can see there the 680 got 117 frames per second, with the Titan getting 129. The overclock didn't really do much for us, obviously, as you can see there, but that's all going to change with not Borderlands 2. I thought this was a different game. As you can see here, the overclock also didn't get us very much further from the stock clock frequency, but we did see quite a bit of performance increase over the GTX 680, and you're probably wondering, where's the 7970X? Oh, it's way down there. I didn't even see it there. But that's mainly because physics was turned on high during this test, and I was trying to turn it off for this test, to be honest, but I couldn't. I popped the card in, and when I opened up the settings in Borderlands 2, the physics setting was completely grayed out, and it wouldn't let me change it. It had locked me in to high physics setting. So I tried to change it in the .ini file or whatever, and that wasn't working out. So obviously, because the AMD card isn't optimized for physics, all of that workload was offset to the CPU, and that's why you see such a performance hit with the 7970X. But aside from that, the Titan did pretty well, and so did the GTX 680 for that matter. But the overclock on the Titan was very marginal. But now it's all gonna change with Far Cry 3. Hey, there's the slide I was looking for. You can see here, it was almost have like an even staircase leading up to the Titan until we overclock it, and then it's just like BAM! Going from 76.1 frames to 90.3. That's a pretty significant overclock performance increase right there. So if you're playing Far Cry 3 and you got a Titan, you better be overclocking that shit. I'm gonna say shit at least one time. At least once in every video. Hitman Absolution, we saw another pretty hefty increase in performance with the overclock, going from 94.4 to 110.6 frames per second with the GTX Titan. Yeah, and also the GTX 680 did finish last in this test, but I did want to point out that even though the 7970X best sit in quite a few of these tests, the Lightning is a very cool card and remains very, like, one of the best coolers I've seen on a card of this caliber, so I just wanted to point that out. Good job, MSI. Battlefield 3, 135.8 frames per second. Yeah, I don't even know if that's really necessary, but it's kind of cool to look at, right? 117.4, the stock clock frequency, and we saw 95 and 82 from the 7970 and the GTX 680, respectively. And lastly, our only synthetic benchmark for this video was 3D Mark. This is the latest 3D Mark from Future Mark, and I did run the Firestrike Extreme test. This is the most demanding and graphically taxing test in the 3D Mark suite. So here, taking a look at the graphics score, we actually breached 5,000 points with the GTX Titan overclocked, and we still breached 4,000 points with the GTX Titan at stock clock frequencies. So that definitely blew the hell out of the 7970 and the GTX 680, and it kind of makes a nice little even staircase there as well. Alright guys, so after taking a look at the performance results, what do you all think of the GTX Titan? Do you think it's worth the $1,000 price tag that's attached to it? And honestly, I think it depends on who you ask, because I personally feel Nvidia is targeting this card towards a very specific demographic. And I think that demographic is really narrowed down to people who A, either have a crap ton of money, or people who B, are high-performance users or testers. So if benchmarking is like your legitimate full-time job, you're probably going to want to pick up one of these just to have it for comparison and whatnot. Or if you're a high-end user, like you have a triple-panel display that you game on constantly at 7680 by 1600 resolutions, which screw you, by the way, if that's what you do. But for the general consumer, is it worth it? And I think what you have to really take into consideration is not just the straight-up performance that you get out of this card, but also the other included features that come along with it. For example, Nvidia GPU Boost 2.0, and I didn't mention this earlier, but this card also has the ability to overclock your monitor's refresh rate, which are both of those features are just awesome, right? I think that they're not like marketing fluff. They're not trying to just sell you on some BS feature. I think they're very useful. There's a lot of customizability and options there. All right, so all limitations aside, pretend that you have $1,000 to spend. Just, you can blow it on anything. Money isn't an option. So I think the question then comes down to, why wouldn't you just get a GTX 690 instead of a GTX Titan, right? Because they're both the same price, and in a lot of the tests that I've seen online, the GTX 690 outperforms the Titan in most of those tests. So I think the reason for that, other than the awesome features that you get with this, I think it also comes down to the benefits of having a single GPU card over a dual GPU card like the GTX 690. So for example, you're going to be getting a lot better thermals with a single GPU card because you don't have a second GPU that's emitting heat off of it, right? And as we all know, heat is a GPU killer. So if you're going to be buying a high-end card like this, chances are you're going to be wanting to keep it for a very long time. So it makes sense if you get a card that doesn't run so hot. The other thing is that because you're not generating as much heat with your card, your fan or fans don't need to spin up as much to cool down your componentry. And because of that, you actually achieve lower acoustics, and a really noisy video card can really take you out of that immersive experience when you're trying to play a game, especially if you're not using a set of headphones, for example. And the other thing, lastly, is that I feel like you just get more consistent performance with a single GPU card, because not every single game out there is optimized for a dual GPU card configuration, right? Developers will always optimize the game for at least one GPU, but they don't always go that step further and optimize it for two. So I think with all those things considered, I feel like there is room for justification of the $1,000 price point on this card, but I would love to hear you guys' thoughts as well. So please feel free to leave your thoughts in the comment section below on what you think of the GTX Titan. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this video, guys. I know that was a lot of information to take in. Thank you for bearing with me, but hopefully you guys found it informative and at least a little bit entertaining as well. So I'm Kyle with Awesome Sauce News. Thank you all for watching, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next video.